The following is a production of the University of Minnesota, driven to discover.
Hi, this is David Arundel, your host for the Equity Outcomes Podcast. Thanks for spending some time with me today. In this podcast episode, we feature one of my published book chapters. It is Pathways of Persistence, a review of postsecondary peer cooperative learning programs. It was one of my very first publications where I took a deeper dive into the foundations to peer learning and clarified language describing it that is oftentimes very muddy and very incorrect. I then provide an overview of 6 major peer programs that are used at colleges globally. Since this publication was published around 2005, more recent research studies are going to be missing from the description. But some of the foundational research for each of these 6 programs are going to be there. This was a particularly important publication for me because it was me trying to break away from just being only focused about talking about supplemental instruction, which I deeply loved and appreciated, and all the time that I spent down at the SI Center in UMKC. But I began to understand that there's other wonderful programs that are out there. So this was my opportunity to showcase the other 5 programs that I thought that you ought to be aware of. In addition to this audio episode, I also provide 2 PDF documents that you can download. First, a copy of the book chapter. Second, I provide a copy of the book that it appeared inside of. That book is named Best Practices for Access and Retention in Higher Education. It was co-authored by many of my colleagues at the General College at the University of Minnesota, along with others across the nation. There's lots of different ways that people are approaching the issue of increasing access and success for students. And I think that this particular volume really gives you a nice overview of some of the different approaches that were being taken back in 2005. To make this listening experience a little bit better, I asked several of my synthetic colleagues to help read the publication. Our primary narrator is going to be Donald. Olivia is going to be asking questions or making comments. Well, let's listen to Olivia as she begins the narration of this publication.
Thanks, David, for the opportunity to bring this publication to our listeners. I am happy to be working with Donald again.
And I am pleased to be working with you again, Olivia. Let me provide an overview of this publication. This chapter focuses upon a subset of the broader educational practice of peer collaborative learning, specifically post-secondary peer cooperative learning programs that embed study strategy practice within their activities. These practices have demonstrated higher student outcomes, including increased student persistence towards graduation. Adoption of such research-based practices has become more essential since institutions cannot waste scarce resources upon programs that may not contribute both to increased student success as well as increasing the institution's economic stability through lower student dropout rates and the loss of tuition dollars. I will start with an introduction to this book chapter. Peer collaborative learning has been popular in education for decades. As both a pedagogy and learning strategy, it has been frequently adopted and adapted for a wide range of academic content areas throughout education at the elementary, secondary, and post-secondary levels due to its benefits. The professional literature is filled with reports of individual professors integrating this approach into post-secondary classrooms in diverse ways. Increased attention has been placed on this practice due to claims by some programs that carefully coordinated and managed learning programs with specific protocols can increase student persistence rates towards graduation, supporting both student goal aspirations as well as bolstering institutional revenues. This chapter does not attempt to be inclusive of this broad field of literature concerning peer collaborative learning. Instead, it is focused intentionally on a subset of the educational practice that share a common focus with increasing student persistence towards graduation. Rather than a meta-analysis of all published research studies, this chapter is a preliminary review and a description of 6 models. At the end of the chapter, several suggestions are made for differentiating the models from each other and the level of institutional resources and resolve with implementing them.
With all the different peer learning programs operating on campuses, how did you decide which ones to focus upon?
The 6 student peer learning programs included in this chapter meet the following characteristics. A. The program must have been implemented at the post-secondary or tertiary level. B. The program has a clear set of systematic procedures for its implementation at an institution. C. Program evaluation studies have been conducted and are available for review. D. The program intentionally embeds learning strategy practice along with review of the academic content material. E. The program outcomes include both increased content knowledge with higher persistence rates, and F. The program has been replicated at another institution with similar positive student outcomes. From a review of the professional literature, 6 programs emerged: Accelerated Learning Groups, ALGs, Emerging Scholars Program, ESP, Peer-Led Team Learning, PLTL, Structured Learning Assistance, SLA, Supplemental Instruction, SI, and Video-Based Supplemental Instruction, VSI. As will be described in the following narrative, some of the programs share common history and seek to improve upon previous practices. Other programs were developed independently.
There are many terms used to describe this field of peer learning. 3 common terms are collaborative learning, cooperative learning, and learning communities. How are those terms similar and different from each other?
A review of the professional literature finds that the terms collaborative learning, cooperative learning, and learning communities are sometimes used interchangeably with one another. Although they share similarities with one another, a more precise differentiation is needed to help explore the area and the utility of each for its intended educational outcomes. Cooper, Robinson, and Ball, 2003. Regarding their historical development and appearance within the professional literature in the United States, collaborative learning appeared first, cooperative learning second, and learning communities last. A search of the ERIC database, 2004, found more than 8,000 entries regarding descriptive and research studies that contained one or more of the 3 terms indexed within their documents. Collaborative learning refers to a wide range of formal and informal activities that include any form of peer-student interaction. This is the broadest and most general of the 3 terms. This term describes any classroom activity by an instructor that involves student peer-to-peer involvement. Cooperative learning is more narrowly defined as a subset of collaborative learning. It often follows these principles. A positive interdependence is established in the group through adoption of different roles that support the group moving to complete a goal. B. Peers interact with one another. C. Activities are structured to establish individual accountability and personal responsibility. D. Development of interpersonal and small group skills. And E. Group processing of small group activities through verification of information accuracy. Cusio, 2002. Johnson, Hollebeck, and Roy, 1984. Collaborative and cooperative learning groups, learning communities are distinguished by their focus on interactive peer learning. Learning communities are often more focused on enhanced curricular and pedagogical outcomes. In addition to often employing some version of student interactive learning, learning communities take several approaches to modifying the classroom experience by restructuring the curriculum. Some of the ways that courses may be modified is through linked courses, learning clusters, freshman interest groups, federated learning communities, and coordinated studies. Gabelnik, McGregor, Matthews, and Smith, 1990.
I am a visual learner. Can you give me a visual organizer to make sense of the relationships among these terms with each other?
A way to understand the relationships among these 3 terms is through a Venn visual diagram, most often used in mathematics. Collaborative learning is considered to be the largest construct, both due to its general definition as well as its numerical ranking as most frequently cited in professional literature. ERIC, 2004. A smaller construct lies within collaborative learning. This is cooperative learning. While it holds to the same generalizations and goals of collaborative learning, it is much more specific in its implementation and following of specified protocols for its use. A related term to both collaborative and cooperative learning is that of learning communities. While learning communities often utilize some peer collaborative or peer cooperative learning activities as part of its pedagogy, it is generally focused more on curricular transformation. However, it is possible to implement some aspects of learning communities without extensive use of either collaborative or cooperative learning, since the focus may be more on team teaching by instructors and the integration of academic content material, i.e., cluster course that merges the content of an introduction to science with an ethics course. rather than extensive use of student-peer interactive learning activities. In this chapter, the focus will be on peer cooperative learning programs that embed learning strategies practice within review of the academic content material and which also meet the other selection criteria previously mentioned. This is an important topic in the field of developmental education and learning assistance in particular, and with post-secondary education in general. This is due to the need by institutions to both meet the needs of a more diverse entering student body while maintaining or increasing academic rigor. Bastido and Gumport, 2003. The institution must make systemic changes in the educational environment that will increase the academic success and persistence rates of all students to meet the expectations of stakeholders such as parents, legislators, and funding agencies. Although the number of academically underprepared students is increasing, historic delivery systems of academic development for students such as remedial and developmental courses are being reduced or eliminated by some states. Barefoot, 2003. Damashek, 1999. Parsid and Lewis, 2003. Many institutions have already adopted one of more of the 6 programs described in this chapter. The need for such approaches may increase due to the demands to meet the needs of access to an increasingly diverse student body without the traditional approaches offered by developmental education in the past.
Now that you have explained those 3 terms for sorting peer learning programs, let's take a deeper dive into specific programs operating on college campuses in the U.S. and globally.
6 post-secondary peer collaborative learning programs were selected for inclusion in this chapter based on the criteria mentioned earlier in the narrative. A. Accelerated Learning Groups, ALGs, B. Emerging Scholars Program, ESP, C. Peer-Led Team Learning, PLTL, D. Structured Learning Assistance, SLA, E. Supplemental Instruction, SI, and F. Video-Based Supplemental Instruction, VSI. A short narrative overview of each follows with results from several research studies that have examined the impact upon student outcomes. The 6 programs have been divided into 2 groups.
Why sort these 6 specific programs into 2 groups or categories?
The first group are those that provide adjunct support through outside-of-class activities with little change by the primary course instructor. The first in this category is SI. In recent years, 2 programs have been developed to address limitations of the SI model, ALGs and SLA. The second group of peer cooperative programs are those that share a common characteristic of a transformed classroom learning environment by all enrolled students. Major changes have been made by the primary course instructor through either integration of the peer learning model into the basic course delivery or heavy involvement by the instructor with the peer learning activities. The first of these programs is ESP, developed at approximately the same time as SI in the 1970s. In the 1990s, 2 programs were created with similar purposes and protocols to ESP, PLTL and VSI. Most of these 6 programs cite in their literature reviews references concerning the other peer learning programs, as it appears that each have been an incremental improvement upon previous peer learning models.
Let's begin with that first group of peer programs that most often occur outside of the class sessions. Supplemental instruction is the first example.
The supplemental instruction, SI, model of academic assistance helps students in historically difficult classes master content while they develop and integrate learning and study strategies. The program was originally developed at the University of Missouri-Kansas City in 1973 and has been adopted by hundreds of institutions in the U.S. and abroad. Arundale, 2002. Goals of SI include a. Improve student grades in targeted courses, b. Reduce the attrition rate within those courses, and c. Increase graduation rates of students. All students in a targeted course are urged to attend SI sessions, and students with varying ability levels participate. There is no stigma attached to SI because courses which have had high rates of D, F, and course withdrawals for multiple academic terms are the focus rather than attempting to identify specific students who are deemed to be high risk for failure due to predictors such as low standardized test scores or previous academic failures at the secondary or post-secondary levels. SI can be implemented in 1 or more courses each academic term. Martin and Arundale, 1994.
There are a lot of people involved with the SI program. Tell me about their roles.
There are 4 key persons involved with SI. The first is the SI supervisor, a trained professional on the SI staff. The SI supervisor is responsible for identifying the targeted courses, gaining faculty support, selecting and training SI leaders, and monitoring and evaluating the program. Once the historically difficult courses have been identified, the SI supervisor contacts the faculty members concerning SI for their course. The second key person for SI is the faculty member who teaches one of the identified courses. SI is only offered in courses in which the faculty member invites and supports SI. Faculty members screen SI leaders for content competency and approve selections. The third key person is the SI leader. SI leaders are students or learning center staff members who have been deemed course competent, approved by the course instructor, and trained in proactive learning and study strategies. SI leaders attend course lectures, take notes, read all assigned materials, and conduct 3 to 5 out-of-class SI sessions per week. The SI leader is the model student, a facilitator who helps students to integrate course content and learning and study strategies. The fourth key component of the SI program are the participating students from the class. There have been several hundred research studies concerning SI conducted at institutions from around the world.
I find useful these quantitative studies, but also I like qualitative studies since it helps me to make a better connection with the students and what is happening with them.
Ashwin, 2003, reported about a qualitative study on the impact of SI with an institution in the United Kingdom. More than one-third of the professional literature concerning SI has been published about programs outside the US. Ashwin found that attendance at SI sessions was positively and significantly correlated to academic performance. This relationship was found even when prior levels of academic performance were controlled. An unusual finding of the research was that students who attended SI sessions sometimes chose to not employ rigorous study strategies and results in a reduction of the quality of the learning of these students. Qualitative evidence suggests that this change in approach was in response to an increased awareness of the assessment demands of the course and that these students had chose to devote more effort to other courses that required higher levels of rigor to pass them. It is argued that these results suggest that the outcomes and operation of the SI program were influenced by the context in which it operated. Congos, 2003, is one of the most frequently published authors concerning SI. His latest publication identified recommended policies and practices for SI programs. The document provides a means for conducting a program review with 90 recommended practices. The categories covered by the evaluation tool include SI Leader Pre-Semester Training, SI Faculty Training, SI Leader Training during the academic term, SI Session Observation and Feedback, In-Class Introduction of SI, and End-of-Term Evaluation.
We are ready for the second example of out-of-class peer programs. It is named Accelerated Learning Groups, ALGs.
Accelerated Learning Groups, ALGs, were developed at the University of Southern California in Los Angeles in the early 1990s by Sidney Stansberry 2001-A, 2001-B, and have been adopted at several institutions. They are designed to meet the needs of students who had significant skill or knowledge deficiencies that often inhibited their effective use of other voluntary participation peer cooperative learning programs, such as sulfur monoiodide. Stansberry noted that the college students who were least academically prepared were often the ones who never attended, or only attended 1 or 2 SI sessions at the beginning of the academic term. The reasons for their non-involvement included both their severe cognitive deficits as well as motivational issues. This helped to prompt the need to develop another intervention for these students, which eventually resulted in creation of ALGs, Personal Communication, January 15, 2004. ALGs combine peer-led small group learning activities, assessment, frequent feedback by a learning skills specialist, and development of an individual education plan, IEP, for each student. ALG students are concurrently enrolled in a challenging entry-level course while they develop the necessary skills and knowledge prescribed by the IEP. The ALG students are placed into a triad with another student with similar IEP objectives and a peer leader who worked intensely with the students under the supervision of a learning skills specialist. Participation in ALGs continues in the academic term until the learning skills specialist deemed it appropriate for transition into another peer development program or individual tutoring.
This program operates differently than SI. Tell me more about the details of operating ALG.
Minimum requirements for implementation of ALGs require prerequisite academic testing of students, staff time of a qualified learning skills specialist, academic monitoring throughout the academic term, employment of well-trained student peer leaders to facilitate the triads, faculty support for the program operating in tandem with their course, and availability of an academic enrichment program, such as SI, to continue modeling cognitive and metacognitive learning strategies with the students after they had completed their work within the ALG program. In a study with students at the University of Southern California, Stansberry 2001A found that ALGs were especially useful for at-risk students enrolled in an introductory science course. A pilot study investigated whether at-risk students who participated in an ALG-SI combination demonstrated higher self-efficacy and SI attendance than those who participate in only SI. Results suggest that at-risk students are more likely to participate in 12 or more SI sessions if they attend an ALG-SI combination than if they attend only SI. In addition, the range of final grades was higher for those who attend an ALG-SI combination than for those who attend only SI.
It sounds like the ALG program can work in tandem with SI to help students be more successful. Tell me more.
According to ALG's creator, the development of prerequisite skills is essential for the efficacy of SI to serve academically underprepared students who may shun the very academic intervention that would be of most help to them. Stansberry 2001A. Stansberry 2001B. One of the challenges for SI is that only approximately one-third of students in an average class attend SI sessions. This rate of participation holds nearly the same for all groups within the class, regardless of previous levels of academic achievement as measured by standardized test scores or high school rank percentile. Arundale, 1997. Therefore, only a third of the students from lowest predicted academic preparation level attend SI sessions. It was for this target population that ALGs were created.
I think we are ready for the third example of programs that operate outside of the classroom. That would be Structured Learning Assistance, SLA.
Initiated in 1993 at Ferris State University. Structured Learning Assistance, SLA, workshops assist students in developing the background needed to connect to the course content and to develop and apply the learning strategies most appropriate to the content area. SLA has been recognized through several national awards and is currently supported by a 3-year U.S. Department of Education grant from the Fund for the Improvement of Postsecondary Education, FIPSE. Results indicated that SLA can significantly improve student pass rates, including at-risk students. Other institutions have attended training workshops hosted by Ferris State University to enable them to implement SLA. The current FIPSE grant supports 4 other institutions successfully implementing the SLA model. Wolgamott, 2004. SLA provides both an academic and an effective support system. SLA targets courses that are considered high risk for failure, academically rigorous gateway courses for academic majors, or historically difficult upper division courses. The SLA workshops are formally scheduled 4 hours weekly in the student schedules similar to an accompanying science lab. Attendance at the workshop is required of all students the first week of the course or until the first test, quiz, or other assessment is given in the class. Following this first course assessment, attendance is required only for students whose current grade in the course falls below a C. Other students may voluntarily continue to attend the SLA sessions. SLA was created, among other purposes, to address the problem of less academically prepared students who were often not attending either SI or individual tutoring sessions. Wolgamott, 2004. With SLA class professors receive regular, ongoing information about student progress, student concerns, and ways of better connecting with students. SLA sessions provide explicit instruction in learning strategies. Research studies suggest that SLA students earn higher final course grades than non-participants in control groups. Doyle, 1999. Kowalczyk, 2003. A faculty development component is also part of SLA which supports higher academic achievement for students. Informal classroom assessment information is provided to participating faculty members to assist them in making modifications to classroom activities and prompt review of difficult concepts. Doyle, 1999.
Tell me about research studies that validate the effectiveness of SLA.
2 research studies have been externally published about SLA. Doyle and Kowalczyk, 1999, conducted analysis of data collected with the SLA program at Ferris State University. Data suggest the following outcomes for the SLA program. Higher rates of students earning C or better in the course. B. Higher persistence rate at the institution, and C. 73% of students attributed SLA as significant to their academic achievement. In another study at Ferris State University, Doyle and Hooper, 1997, investigated SLA during a 3-year study. Results suggested that SLA can significantly improve student pass rates, even for at-risk students. In nearly 85% of the 42 courses offered with SLA support, the SLA students had higher pass rates than those of all other Ferris State students taking the same courses. This improvement was especially marked in the mathematics courses, where the average pass rate increased anywhere from 24 to 45%. Now we are ready to consider the second category of embedded peer cooperative learning programs that operate within the course sessions. Sometimes the students are required to attend an additional class session for these mandatory activities. Let's hear about the first example of this category, Emerging Scholars Program, ESP. Developed at the University of California, Berkeley in the early 1980s, the Emerging Scholars Program, ESP, is also known as the Calculus Workshop Program, the Mathematics Workshop Program, and the Treisman model after its creator, Philip Uri Treisman, 1986. The ESP program has been adopted and adapted by more than 100 institutions across the U.S., Born, 2001. Especially was based on qualitative research by Treisman, who investigated the difference in academic success of students of different ethnic and cultural groups. The academic success rate for African American students in math, science, and engineering graduate programs was very low in comparison to Asian students. After an extensive ethnographic study of Asian students at UC Berkeley, Treisman designed a program that created a system based on the informal student-driven sessions created by the Asian students in challenging calculus courses. The resulting program was not only based on sound cognitive learning strategies, but also attentive to the effective domain of learning for students of color. After successful use with students of color at many institutions, implementers of the program have found positive results for many student demographic categories: Fullilove and Treisman, 1990, Moreno and Muller, 1999.
Tell me about some of the key success ingredients of the program.
Most ESP programs shared the following elements. A. Build a cohort community of first-year students of color that is academically oriented and a source of peer support. B. Provide the cohort with an extensive orientation to the college and with ongoing academic advising. C. Advocate the interests of the cohort. D. Monitor their academic progress and adjustment to the environment. E. Provide the cohort with ongoing adjunct instructional sessions that promote development of cognitive and metacognitive learning strategies needed for independent learning. And F. Link high school level and undergraduate level affirmative action efforts. Treisman, 1986. During most ESP implementations, students commit themselves to attend 2 additional lab sessions weekly, each lasting 2 hours each. At some institutions, students are required to attend the sessions based on pre-entry test scores. At other institutions, students are encouraged to make a commitment through creation of a perception that ESP is an honors program and that it is a privilege to participate. Leopard, 2001, Mills, 1999. Following is a summary of several research studies that have been conducted concerning especially.
What are a few of the research studies that have been conducted on Spanish pesetas?
Born, 2001, conducted a 2-year quasi-experiment at Northwestern University to evaluate the effect of ESP on performance of historically underrepresented students, e.g., African American, Hispanic, and traditional, e.g., Caucasian, Asian, undergraduate biology students in a 3-course series and to investigate motivational explanations for performance differences. Traditional students randomly assigned to the ESP workshops, n equals 61, performed between 1/2 and 1 standard deviation better than those assigned to the control group, n equals 60, p.05, in each quarter without spending more time studying. During quarter 1, ESP historically underrepresented students, n equals 25, showed a pattern of increasing exam performance in comparison to students of similar ethnic background, n equals 21, who showed a decreasing pattern, p.05. Although gender differences in biology performance were studied, none were detected between those who participated in ESP and those who did not. Fullilove and Treisman, 1990, conducted an extensive study of the ESP at the University of California, Berkeley between 1978 and 1984 with African American mathematics students. To provide comparison data, a baseline of student performance was established during the period of 1973 to 1977 before the ESP program was provided to students. The percentage of non-participants in ESP earned grades of D or below ranged from 33% to 41%, depending upon the year. The ESP participants earned similar grades at a much lower rate, ranging between 3% to 7% in comparison over the time period. The percentage of non-participants earning grades of B or higher ranged between 10% to 28%. The ESP participants earned much higher grades in comparison, ranging between 39% to 61%. The persistence and graduation rates favored the ESP participants, 65% versus a lower rate of 41% for the non-participants. The study took into account pre-entry attributes such as SAT scores on the verbal and mathematics subtests.
I am sure there is more research on Spanish pesetas, but let's move on to the second example of peer learning in this category. It is called Video-Based Supplemental Instruction, VSI.
VSI was developed at the University of Missouri, Kansas City in the late 1980s and has been implemented by dozens of institutions in the U.S. and abroad. Video-based supplemental instruction is an interactive information processing and delivery system that helps academically at-risk students master rigorous course content as they concurrently develop and refine reasoning and learning skills. Rather than requiring prerequisite enrollment in a traditional developmental course, VSI is a learning system that mainstreams the best practices of developmental education into historically difficult core curriculum courses. Research suggests the efficacy of VSI for improving academic achievement for students of diverse levels, from elementary school children studying mathematics through professional school by future doctors studying to pass the first step of their medical license examination boards. VSI is presented as a holistic alternative to traditional approaches of developmental education. Martin, Arundale, and Blanc, 1997.
This is a little confusing. Help explain more deeply the differences between SI and PSI.
VSI differs from SI in several respects. With VSI, the students enroll in a designated core curriculum course. The course professor has previously recorded all didactic presentations on videotape for use with underprepared students as well as other students who opt for this highly interactive way of learning. Instead of attending the professor's regular lecture class, students enroll in the video section of the professor's course. Students in both sections, live and videotape, are held to the same performance standards. Specially designed facilitator and student manuals support the video sections. Martin and Blanc, 2001. Integrated within these manuals are sections that require the students to practice use of appropriate study and learning strategies with the course content material. The VSI section of the course functions much like a distance learning telecourse. VSI students, led by a trained facilitator, start and stop the videotaped presentation at predetermined times and, in addition, whenever they have a question or want clarification. Professors design the video presentations to include periodic small group assignments to ensure mastery of one concept before the next is introduced. Students complete these tasks under the supervision and with the guidance of the facilitator. When the taped lecture resumes, the professor models how he or she thinks about the assigned tasks. In this way, the students have time to construct and verify their understanding as well as compare their own thinking to that of the expert. Martin and Blanc, 2001.
Tell us about some research studies on PSI.
There are several published research studies concerning VSI. Hurley, 2000, investigated several questions of the VSI program at the University of Missouri, Kansas City. A. Final grades earned by students in VSI as compared with students enrolled in a lecture format class with the same professor. B. Potential changes in self-efficacy, self-confidence and mastery of learning strategies of VSI students. The major conclusions from the study were the following. A. The VSI students received a statistically significant higher percentage of A and B than a comparable group of non-VSI students in the same history class over 14 semesters. B. The VSI students received a statistically significant lower rate D and F final course grades than the non-VSI students. Interviews with VSI students suggested that VSI was a significant factor in the acquisition of a variety of strategies that provided them with the academic tools to be successful on their history exams in that class. In addition, the VSI students indicated that they developed a greater sense of self-efficacy in the class and greater personal confidence. Research by Koch and Snyder, 1997, is representative of the studies conducted by VSI programs outside the U.S. The researchers investigated the effect of VSI on the mathematics performance of students whose matric marks did not enable them to be directly admitted to the science faculty at the University Port Elizabeth, South Africa. These students were enrolled in Ethembeni Community College in Port Elizabeth, which serves as a preparation area before admission to UPE. 15 students who enrolled in VSI Math were matched with 14 students enrolled in a similar math course that required attendance at supplemental instruction (SI) sessions. Research suggests that VSI was a more useful instructional delivery system for students with a minimum level of pre-knowledge in mathematics. In addition, the researchers suggested the usefulness of VSI in distance learning venues where experienced and trained faculty members are unavailable to deliver live instruction.
We are ready for the third example of a peer learning program that operates during class sessions. It is called Peer-Led Team Learning, PLTL.
Peer-led team learning, PLTL, is an innovative model in science education. PLTL was originally developed at the City University of New York, CUNY, in the mid-1990s. Support through a grant from the National Science Foundation has assisted in adoption of this model by more than 100 institutions. A website maintained by the National PLTL Office disseminates information and research studies concerning PLTL. Dreyfus, 2004. Student leaders guide the activities of small groups of students in weekly PLTL meetings. These meetings are included as part of the course requirements. The students work through challenging problems that are designed to be solved cooperatively. The student leaders receive extensive training before the beginning of the academic term in a wide variety of areas, including how to foster student engagement with the content material and with each other. According to the program's developers, the PLTL methodology offers a number of educational opportunities. The supportive format encourages questions and discussions that lead to greater conceptual understanding. B. Students learn to work in teams and to communicate more effectively, which are valuable skills needed for further success in post-secondary education as well as when they enter the world or work. C. Use of standardized adjunct print curriculum materials and wordbooks help to ensure higher quality learning that is more often uniformly experienced by all students at PLTL implementing institutions. And D. Peer leaders learn teaching and group management skills. Chrysalis and Deming, 2001.
This program sounds similar to Spanish pesetas that you described earlier. Help explain more.
A difference between the approaches of PLTL and ESP relates to curriculum development. While in ESP each course supported by the program develops its own curriculum materials, the National Office for PLTL has published supplemental textbooks and workbooks that can be added to the course delivery and also serve as models for development of local curricula. In addition, PLTL offers national conferences and training workshops to support institutions with implementing the program. This latter approach allows for more efficient and effective adoption of the PLTL program and increases the quality of sessions that are facilitated by student peer leaders. Chrysalis and Deming, 2001. The following are guiding principles of PLTL. A. The program is integral to the course through required attendance at 2 hours of workshop time weekly. B. Peer leaders are trained in group leadership and course content. C. Activities and materials are challenging yet accessible. D. Faculty are deeply involved in the program. E. Physical space and environments are conducive to discussion and learning. F. And the program has strong support from the institution. Gosser, Chrysalis, Kampmeyer, Roth, Strozak, and Varma Nelson, 2000. Gosser and Roth, 1998. In addition to numerous studies provided through the National PLTL website, independent researchers are conducting detailed studies at their home institutions. Tien, Roth, and Kampmeyer, 2002, reported their study of PLTL in an undergraduate organic chemistry course. Quantitative and qualitative data were collected. PLTL students, i.e., treatment group, were compared with students who participated in recitation sessions, control group. PLTL students earned higher final course grades and had higher persistence rates. Analysis of interviews with PLTL students suggested that the program helped them to learn more course material, were more socially engaged, intellectually stimulated, and found the experience to be a productive use of time.
We have been on quite a journey with different concepts of peer learning, different categories of peer programs, and finally an overview of 6 major programs. Now, how do I select the most appropriate cooperative learning model to meet the specific needs of my institution?
To display the relationship between the 6 identified peer cooperative learning programs and learning assistance programs in general, it would be helpful to compare them with Koemig's 1983 hierarchy of learning improvement programs. In the hierarchy of learning improvement programs, 4 basic program types are described and ranked, differentiated by the extent by which they are comprehensive in response to the various needs of students and institutionalized into the academic mainstream. Level 1. Isolated courses in remedial skills. Level 2. Learning assistance to individual students. Level 3. Provides course-related supplementary learning activities outside the class for some objectives. Level 4. Comprehensive learning system in the course. Page 21. Using Koemig's hierarchy, it is possible to arrange the 6 peer cooperative programs. According to Koemig, the highest level of student outcomes occurs when a comprehensive learning system is integrated throughout the course learning experience. This requires a transformative experience by the institution due to a. Heavy involvement of the course professor with curriculum development. B. Training, monitoring, and supervision of peer group facilitators. C. Alignment of educational objectives among all course components. D. Changes in institutional and course policies and expectations. E. Release time for professors to complete essential tasks. And F. Stable, long-term institutional funding since outside grants are difficult to obtain or maintain. Especially, PLTL and VSI fit into this 4th level C. 4th level. These programs have a higher likelihood of improved student outcomes. They are also the most demanding of institutional resources and changes in the campus environment. The next level of programs, according to Koemig, are those that are adjunct to the course and provide support for it through either voluntary or required participation. ALGs, SLA, and SI are placed into this group. The expectancy for results, based on Koemig's model, is not as high as for the Level 4 comprehensive programs as described in the previous paragraph. But ALGs, SLA, and SI are predicted to yield higher student outcomes than either individual assistance to students such as tutoring or enrollment in remedial courses. This third category is less expensive and less labor-intensive to implement, but may yield lower desired student outcomes. Higher levels of institutionalization of peer learning programs require high levels of funding and support from administration and faculty members. This investment may pay high dividends. The future political and economic environment may be more supportive for these types of programs for supporting higher student persistence rates in comparison with traditional remedial or developmental education courses, which are under considerable pressure for curtailment as described earlier in this chapter. It is recommended that before adoption of any of the 6 programs, that both a careful review of the published literature be undertaken as well as personal communication with those successfully operating the programs. Some of the programs, such as PLTL and SI, offer national training workshops to enable others to implement the programs. On-site observations can probably be negotiated with any of the 6 programs. The investment in such telephone and on-site observations will help to reveal the myriad of essential elements needs for successful implementation of the specific practice. Often these essential details are not revealed in the published literature, which tend to be more focused on statistical studies and not on the detailed implementation protocols. Based on personal experience as a former national training director for one of the 6 programs, the author of this chapter strongly recommends careful planning before attempting to implement the programs. While the educational outcomes described in the published literature are replicable, it generally requires careful implementation and constant monitoring to assure continued quality.
Selecting a peer program is complex, since one program may be more appropriate than another one, depending upon the needs of a particular college. What are some further research issues regarding peer cooperative learning?
One of the most perplexing issues facing peer cooperative learning groups is dealing with student motivation and goal orientation. Sometimes the students who could most benefit from the positive effects of peer learning are the ones least likely to participate due to fear of exposing their academic weaknesses to others or even to themselves. Most of these 6 programs have dealt with the issue through mandatory attendance at sessions. Although brute force does compel attendance, it does not necessarily follow that students willingly adopt the new academic behaviors and implement them in other courses when not under the dictates of program requirements. Exploring the complexity of student motivation is being carefully studied among elementary and secondary education student populations. However, this important construct is often ignored in the study of post-secondary education in general, and the provision of learning assistance at the college level, in particular. Creating peer cooperative learning programs that provide both structure and an environment that encourages students to modify their motivations for learning will require more work by program designers. Too often students have been expected to adopt the expectations and learning conditions of the institution without direct instruction. This literature supports the notion that it is necessary for institutions to implement programs that are more attentive to individual differences among students. Much work has yet to be done.
Where do I go for more information on this topic area?
By its very nature, this document is dated as soon as it is printed. A way to locate up-to-date information on these 6 post-secondary peer cooperative learning programs is through this author's website that contains a searchable database of citations that were used to identify the professional literature which served as the basis of this chapter. This web-based database will be regularly updated with addition of new references and accompanying annotations. In addition, the website permits a user to search the database of more than 1,600 references by more than 40 search terms. For example, it would be possible to identify references to SI programs in chemistry that primarily served students of color. In addition to the interactive database, a print version of the annotated bibliography is available in the Acrobat PDF format for users to read online or to print on their computer. This print document as well as the online resource and instruction for its use are available at https://www.arendale.org. The user is encouraged to read through the documentation to gain the most benefit from using the database search engine.
Thanks everyone for listening today. And Donald, next time we work together, you can ask the questions, and I will read the article.
It works for me, Olivia.